Welcome to Oxford News This Week. I'm Elgin Nichols.
And I'm Terry Stiles. In this week's news, Addison Township ZBA approves a cell tower variance, 2 community members are lost, and Oxford Village Council okays application process for special events.
Stay tuned. Learn more about these stories and others. The Oxford News begins right now. There are usually empty seats at Oxford's Village's various government meetings, and unfortunately, there's going to be one more from now on. Ronald Rolando, a 17-year downtown business owner, died unexpectedly at his Addison Township home on April 12th. If you've ever attended even one of our many downtown-related meetings, you would have seen Ron quietly observing the decision makers. While not often ever the supporter of downtown Oxford, Ron would sometimes offer sage suggestions and observations to the councils, always one that would benefit the well-being of the downtown. He will be sorely missed by those in his own community of Leonard. Ron is survived by his loving wife Dora, their children and grandchildren. A mass of community members attended visitation and funeral services for Ron last Friday. He was 76. Our heartfelt thoughts and prayers go out to Ron's entire family.
Well, both Oxford and Lake Orion lost prominent business members last week. Oxford resident and Orion Township businessman Don Malash has passed away at the age of 91. As a member of one of the top 100 Chrysler dealerships in the world, Palace Chrysler Dodge, Mr. Malash was known for his entrepreneurial spirit within both communities and his endearing commitment to a very large family. Born March 9, 1927, Don was a veteran of the U.S. Navy, meeting his wife Jerry while stationed in Newfoundland. They were never apart until her death on February 26, 2017. After their marriage, they moved to Lake Orion, and Don started Malash Used Car Lot in the 1960s, growing both their family and their dealership there ever since. Mr. Malash passed on April 12th, and a well-attended funeral service was held at the Catholic Church in Lake Orion last Tuesday. Don is the brother-in-law of our very own Dave Kenny, and our thoughts are with the entire Malash family.
Last week, Oxford Village Councilman Eric Dolan expressed concern the village clerk's treasurer responsibilities are still being handled by a temporary $43 per hour independent contractor, Lori Fisher, who is also the Addison Township elected treasurer. Dolan wants to see someone permanently hired to fill the position, and in a successful motion, he requested to add the item to the next council's meeting for a discussion. Prior to, however, the council will hold a workshop to discuss the pros and cons of hiring either Fisher or look for a more qualified candidate. Dolan noted the issue was to be discussed at the council's March 27th work study session. However, only 30 minutes was allotted for that particular meeting, and the time ran out before the subject could be discussed.
From now on, anyone wishing to conduct a special event in the village of Oxford, they will be required to submit an application for council review and approval. In addition, in 2019, the applicant will be required to pay a remediation fee for services rendered by village employees, services that would be used before, during, or after the event. In a 3-2 vote to adopt the process, councilpersons Basardi and Helmuth voted against the action.
In a 4-1 decision, Addison Township's zoning board of appeals confirmed its July 31st decision to approve a dimensional variance for a proposed cell tower located near Kingsbury Country Day School. The tower faced public opposition related to concerns about radiation and structural safety around the children. For further information on the meeting, visit oxfordleader.com.
And Independence Township Life Scout has a thoughtful project to help the mental health of Oxford dogs waiting to be adopted. Evan Raditz is a member of the Troop 185, sponsored by Our Lady of the Lakes Parish and Oakland County Sportsman Club, to progress towards his Eagle Scout badge. Raditz built 3 pieces of agility training equipment for the Canine Stray Rescue League in Oxford. The project included a teeter board, weave poles, and a jump bar, all equipment used for dog agility sports, which involve handlers in using various cues and body language to direct canines through an obstacle course. Thanks, Evan, for helping our canine friends.
And the Rotary Club of Oxford is honoring a local man who literally has service in his name. Our own Bill Service was named the 2018 recipient of the Rotary Club's prestigious G.E. Meads Award, which honors non-Rotary members who stand out as community leaders who have gone above and beyond helping others and making an impact in our community. Bill Service, the award during a luncheon on Tuesday, April 24th at the Oxford Public Library.
That's a good time to get the award. That's it for Oxford News this week. If you'd like to learn more about these stories and others, pick up a copy of the Oxford Leader newspaper, or better yet, catch us on our website, occtv.org, on YouTube, and of course our regular channel, Spectrum channel 191 and AT&T channel 99.
Coming up soon on OCTV is John Ochens with the school news, and OCTV's very own Cody Wright with the sports report. And you won't want to miss Auto Talk and Science in the News with Dave Kenny.
I'm Terry Stiles. Thanks for watching Oxford News this week, where we bring your news closer to home.
And I'm Elgin Nichols. Remember, always be kind to your friends and neighbors, and thanks for watching.
Welcome to Science in the News. I'm Dave Kenny, and these stories are taken from the publication New Scientist. In our first story, people who prefer to stay up late seem to have a greater risk of dying. A 6-year study of nearly 500,000 people in the UK has found that people who were night owls were 10% more likely to die during that time period. Kristen Knutson at Northwestern University in Chicago and her colleagues found that people who stayed up late had higher rates of diabetes, mental health disorders, and neurological conditions. They were also more likely to experience psychological stress, use drugs or alcohol, and not get enough exercise or sleep. The problem may be that people who are night owls have a body clock that fails to match their external environment, says Knutson. They shouldn't be forced to get up for an 8 a.m. shift. I've always said that. Make work shifts match people's chronotypes. Some people may be better suited to night shifts. Knutson suggests people who struggle to get up early could help shift their body clocks by exposing, that is to say by ensuring, they are exposed to light early in the morning but not at night. Having a strict bedtime and not leaving tasks until late in the day may help too, she says. In our next story, an analysis of nearly 600,000 people found that those drinking more than 3.55 ounces of alcohol every week, and that's around 5 3/4 cup glasses of wine or pints of beer, were at an increased risk of early death. The study analyzed almost 600,000 current drinkers in 19 countries, none of whom had a known history of cardiovascular disease, and found an increase in all causes of death when more than 3.55 ounces of alcohol were consumed every week. According to the analysis, a 40-year-old who regularly drinks between 7 and 12.3 ounces of alcohol per week, about 10 to 18 glasses of wine or pints of beer, has a lower life expectancy of around 1 to 2 years. Drinking more alcohol was also linked to stroke, heart failure, and fatal aneurysm risk. The findings support recently lowered guidelines in the UK, which recommended that both men and women should not drink more than 3.95 ounces of pure alcohol in a week. This equates to around 6 pints of 4% strength beer or 5.9 fluid ounce glasses of 13% wine. By the way, check out the difference between an ounce and a fluid ounce. They aren't the same. The study did find that the alcohol consumption is linked to a lower risk of non-fatal heart attacks, but that is outweighed by the increased risk of other serious and potentially fatal cardiovascular diseases. The study makes clear that, on balance, there are no health benefits from drinking alcohol, which is usually the case when things sound too good to be true, says Tim Chico at the University of Sheffield in the UK, who was not involved in this study. In our last story, in space, NASA's Transiting Exoplanet Survey Satellite, or TESS, blasted off aboard a Falcon 9 rocket on April 18th. TESS is to take up the mantle of the Kepler Space Telescope, which is expected to run out of fuel by the end of this year. Kepler has found more than 5,000 exoplanets candidates so far and confirmed about half of them. TESS is also able to search 350 times more area of the sky than Kepler can and is expected to find about 20,000 exoplanets in its first 2 years alone. It will take about 2 months after launch to maneuver the satellite into its orbit, about half as far from Earth as the Moon, and test its cameras. After that, there'll just be a flood of information, says the mission's principal investigator, George Ricker, at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology. TESS will use the same transit method Kepler used to find planets. This involves watching a star for dips in its light as a planet passes between the star and the telescope. How often the dips repeat indicates how fast the planet circles its host star, and the amount of light that's blocked tells us the size of the distant world. Rather than looking at distant stars in a small area of the sky like Kepler did, TESS will look at closer stars over 85% of the skies. It is optimized to observe smaller, cooler stars that emit mostly red light. 90% of the stars in the Milky Way emit in those red wavelengths and then seem to have more planets than stars like the Sun, especially smaller Earth-sized planets, says Ricker. Nature's really saying, look here, and that's exactly what we're going to do. Well, that's it for this edition of Science in the News. I'm Dave Kenny. Stay tuned to Oxford Community Television.
To try to make a change. And I think as students who do have a voice and are very passionate about things, we can change things.
Our first robotic team, Torque 2137, just returned from the Michigan State competition and is going on to Worlds in Detroit. Our team made it to the quarterfinals and based on the latest scores is 67th out of over 500 in Michigan teams. Also, they're one of 5 winners of the coveted Chairman's Award. Chief Mentor Ian Houston explains how this award is decided.
Yes, well, it actually starts towards the beginning of the season. They submit an essay with short answer and long form questions about the team and its activities for the last 4 to 5 years in the areas of outreach, both to the community and in promoting STEM, as well as how we act as, not just competitors but competitors with helping other teams as we move through the competitions. Good sportsmanship in those.
So it's about more than just this year, huh?
Yes, it's about the last 5 years. So winning Chairman's is really a commitment of the program to sustainable outreach and growth as a team over a long term and continuing to take that forward.
Gabriel Green is on the team and tells how he felt about the state competition.
As a new student to the program, I am actually overwhelmingly happy with the situation that we're in because even though, from what I hear, a robot is relatively shadowed by our previous years. The fact that we have gotten so far based off how we've functioned and chairman's in itself makes me exceptionally happy.
There'll actually be 2 Worlds competitions, one in Houston, the other in Detroit, where our kids are going. Go Team Torque. Dan Balsley's Autotech had their own competition going on over at OHS, Mini Mites. Dan explains.
Mini Mites is something that I started about 2014. There is a Mites competition, Michigan Industrial Education Technology Society competition, state level, and it's for all the skill areas like wood and machines and construction, and there's one for auto. So I've been going to the Mites competition for years, and I was just amazed that there were so many scholarship opportunities for the students at the state level Mites competition, and I got this idea that it would be fun and educational to have my own version of the Mites competition. So I started what I call Mini Mites.
How does that work?
Mini Mites has 6 different areas, skill areas. So I have the students, I actually have a nice opportunity here because I have Auto 2 and Auto 3 students in the same class. So I have Auto 3 students set up 6 areas in the lab. Suspension, steering and alignment, brakes, electrical, measuring, a written test. And so the Auto 3s are hosting the Auto 2s. The Auto 3s set up the area, come up with skill questions or identification or measurements or specifications or that type of thing in different areas, scan diagnostics, they have to download fault codes and descriptions and that type of thing. So the Auto 3s are hosting each of the areas. Auto 2 students go to each area, get a slip from the Auto 3 student, answer the questions, fill in the data, identify the parts, give it back to the Auto 3. The Auto 3 then grades that sheet and the scores come to me. I put that in an Excel spreadsheet that automatically calculates their scores, and I come up with overall winners for second, third, and winners of each category for second, third. So I end up giving away 21 prizes.
First place overall winners are Jacob Konarski and Terry Scully. Second are Jacob Butterfield and Chase Moore. Third, Jacob Butterfield and Ethan LaRock. In the separate categories, the number 1 winners are Nolan Skirke for electrical, Max Zeiger, scan diagnostics, Max Zeiger again for the written test, and Josh Shaner, automotive measuring. Nice work, guys. Now it's on to Mites in May. 2 longtime Oxford school employees are announcing their retirement this spring. Assistant Superintendent of Human Resources, Nancy Letowski, has been with us for 17 years. The Human Resource Director from Troy Schools has been hired as her replacement. That's David Pass, who's worked in education for 28 years. Our Secretary to the Superintendent, Pat Bono, has decided to take the big step. She has been with Oxford Schools for 19 years. They're good people, and we'll miss them. Best of luck, Nancy and Pat. That's the Oxford School Update for this week. This is Oxford Community Television, keeping it local.
What's happening, Wildcat fans? It's me back again with this week's sports report. I know I'm always saying this nice weather is on the way and then it snows, so I'm just not going to say anything. We had a few games get canceled this last week because it was cold and snowing. However, it did clear up a few times and we managed to carry out some of these spring schedules. The tough part about spring sports is that they are all played outside, but Michigan is just not outdoor friendly in time for the start of the season. Anyhow, let's dive in and see how this week's performances went. We've got baseball, lacrosse, soccer, and tennis, so don't go anywhere. Here they come. First off, boys baseball had a scattered schedule. On the 12th, the freshman club went on the road to take on Clarkston, where we fell hard to a final of 10-2. At the same time, the varsity club over at Everest Academy really taking it to them, the final score ending in a crushing win for us, 9-1. On the 13th, all three clubs played varsity on the road at Bloomfield Hills, where we tasted our own medicine and fell to a final of 9-1. The JV club also took on Bloomfield, but at home, where we took the win in a high-scoring but close game, 9-8. And then freshmen played as well at home, but took on Lapeer and took the win. Yet another close game, final score 4-3. The boys lacrosse team also played on the 12th, both JV and varsity here at home, taking on Troy Athens. The boys lacrosse team seems to struggle as of lately, and that is not quite like them. And we continue that struggle that day, JV falling to a final of 6-0, and varsity as well falling hard to a final of 12-1. Troy Athens was a tough team to say the least, but we still have a lot of season left and a strong lacrosse program here at the high school. The girls lacrosse team also played this week. The varsity girls taking on Farmington on the road on the 11th, taking the win 7-6. On the 13th, both teams returned home to take on Saline. Saline was a tough team, and we lost both matches 12-7 and 13-3. And also the girls soccer team competed here at home against Avondale on the 12th. The JV club taking the win by a massive lead, 8-0, and the varsity club following that up on another high note, 5-0 with the win. And finally, last but not least, girls JV tennis played twice on the 10th. They took on Rochester Adams on the road and fell hard to a final of 12-0. On the 12th, we then went to Brandon to take on the girls and got the win in a close match, 6-5. These girls' scheduled match in Harrison was canceled due to the weather on the 17th, along with the girls' softball game, which was also canceled. Hopefully that's the last of that. Anyhow, that's about all for this week's report. For any more info on these events and more, go to oxfordathletics.org. Plenty of statistics, game breakdowns, and more, all right there at oxfordathletics.org. While you're at it, might as well check us out at occtv.org. All of our coverage of these events and more can be found on our YouTube page, which you can access right there through the website. Once again, that is occtv.org. Well, folks, that's it for this week's report. I want to thank you all for watching and remind you to tune in next time. But until then, I'm Cody Wright. Go Wildcats.
Welcome to this edition of Auto Talk. I'm Dave Kenny, and these stories are taken from the publication Automotive News. In our first story, Volkswagen AG unit Electrify America will install electric vehicle charging stations at more than 100 Walmart store locations in 34 states by mid-2019 as part of Electrify's plans to bolster charging infrastructure across the country, the two companies said. The Walmart charging stations are part of a broader Electrify America project to install 2,000 chargers at nearly 500 charging stations across the country by June of 2019. Wayne Killen, Electrify America's Senior Director for Infrastructure, said that 80% of the Walmart charging stations would be at store locations along highways, while the remaining 20% would be in metro areas. Killen said the highway locations will be primarily provide chargers for trips between U.S. cities, but also cross-country journeys along Interstate 10 between Santa Monica, California and Jacksonville, Florida, plus Interstate 80 that runs from San Francisco and Teaneck, New Jersey. Major automakers have announced plans to invest tens of billions of dollars on families of electric vehicles over the next few years. But a lack of infrastructure for U.S. consumers to recharge their vehicles is seen as a major barrier to the mass adoption of electric vehicles as consumers remain concerned over their limited range. These charging stations will go a long way towards convincing folks that there are a lot of chargers out there, Electrify America's Killen said. Clusters of 4 to 10 chargers will be installed at the Walmart charging stations. Many of the chargers will be able to provide high-speed recharge for electric vehicles. Good thing. And from electricity to gasoline, the auto industry is finally getting traction on its quest, that is, to make 95-octane gasoline the new regular in the United States. In testimony April 13th before the House Energy and Commerce Committee's Environment Subcommittee, Dan Nicholson, General Motors Vice President of Global Propulsion Systems, said making 95-octane the new regular aligns the U.S. with Europe and is one of the most affordable ways to boost fuel economy and lower greenhouse emissions. GM, Ford Motor Company, and Fiat Chrysler Automobiles, working with the United States Council for Automotive Research, are seeking just one grade of fuel, and that's 95. That would eliminate today's grades, generally 87 octane for regular, 88 to 90 for mid-grade, and 91 to 94 for premium. Even though premium gasoline costs about 50 cents more per gallon than regular, Nicholson said moving to 95 octane alone would cost consumers far less. Speaking during a panel discussion at SAE International WCX World Congress Experience in Detroit the day before testifying before the House Committee, Nicholson said a 3% fuel economy improvement could be attained for less than a 3% increase in the cost of fuel. A 3% fuel economy improvement might not sound like much, but engineers struggle for every 1/10 of a percent gain they design, engineer, test, and calibrate vehicles. Fuels and engines have always been a complete system. That's how you have to think about it. I think America deserves as good a gasoline as Europe, Nicholson said. Technologies such as downsized turbocharged direct injected engines like Ford EcoBoost, for instance, for example, with stop-start systems, lightweight vehicle bodies, and transmissions with 8, 9, 10, and even 10 speeds, boosted fuel economy. But moving the fuel economy needle now is very expensive. For example, Nissan Motor Company's new VC Turbo, that stands for Variable Compression Turbocharged 4-cylinder, cost at least $3,000 more to produce than a standard 16-valve double overhead camshaft 4-cylinder. The new engine, available in the 2019 Infiniti QX50, delivers about 20% better fuel economy than the engine it replaced. Some of the cost savings from switching to 95-octane gasoline presumably would come from refiners gaining efficiencies from producing high volumes of just one fuel for the U.S. Nicholson said that it doesn't matter how the petroleum industry raises the octane. David Philippe, Vice President at Ford Motor Company's Powertrain Engineering, appears on the panel with Nicholson, said 95 octane fuel must be affordable. We don't want to put the burden onto the customer, Philippe said, and the cost must not add more than 5 cents per gallon. Higher octane enables engineers to raise an engineer's compression ratio. That in turn increases horsepower and torque and helps the engine run more efficiently. Raising an engine's compression may be the most cost-effective and untapped way to improve fuel economy and lower carbon dioxide emissions. Increasing compression usually requires a modification to the pistons or the cylinder head's combustion chambers. We have an opportunity to play a large role in offering consumers the most affordable option for fuel economy improvement and greenhouse gas reduction, Nicholson testified. Well, that's all for this edition of Auto Talk. I'm Dave Kenny, and as always, may the wind be at your back as you cruise down life's highways. Stay tuned to Oxford Community Television.